Yeah, yeah. Oh
Well, I
yeah,
was
it's the
going to
channel monitor
Daytona.
on
I
the.
had my race gear in my pack when a stranger pulled up beside me in a stock car colored black. He was dressed like a NASCAR driver, a mustache with mirrored eyes. He said, "It's a long walk to Florida. Would you like a ride, son?" Well, I crawled across the roll cage. Then he fired that Chevy up. And the patch on his sleeve said the man had won. Well, welcome everybody to the very first Racing for a Cause podcast. Tonight we have myself, Chris Lakeview, Andy Lambert, and Rick Hammond Jr. We're going to be talking to you about a few different things going on in Racing for a Cause, specifically last week's winners, current point standings in all seasons, and excuse me, in all series, and anything else that pops into mind. Andy, Rick, Andy, how are we doing tonight?
Good, good. How are you?
I
I'm
think
doing really drunk. Rick, how are you, bud?
I'm doing great, brother. I noticed that you didn't change the name of the stream, so that's okay.
That's fine. Don't worry about those little things. We'll get those all in good time. I'm not going to worry about that tonight. So let's start off with the hashtag, one of my favorite series. I got to be honest with you, especially with the name, the hashtag Wreck Rick series. I want to tell everybody, first of all, why we call it that. It started off as a little in house joke between myself, Andy, and Rick Hammond Jr. when it seemed like, and guys, you can back me up on this, it seemed like every single time we were on the track, for one reason or another, one of us would take out Rick.
Yeah, I blame
Yeah,
it on the wheel. I think Rick also blames it on the G27 drivers, so it's definitely the wheel. It's not my fault.
Definitely
yeah,
the wheel.
definitely that G27 that I passed down is starting to kill me. I think you should go back to the Momo.
See, it's paying you back for the abuse you gave it earlier, so it just does its own thing.
That's all good. It's
I
all in
can't
fun.
can't worry about the little things, right, guys? So let's get right into it here. The Street Stock series kind of put it together, Rick, and you can talk about this more. Kind of put it together as kind of a just for fun series, but it's really taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, when we started season one of Racing for a Cause, we concentrated just on the late models on the short tracks, and the first season went by really good. Our last race of the season was quite what's the word I'm thinking of? Exciting, maybe. Uh, Caution filled. We had a lot of people pop in. It was a free broadcast by OSR Broadcasting, Joe White over there, and it really drew people in. And the league kind of went through a little bit of rough patch there with season two of the late models. So, I wanted to do something fun, and the street stocks being a free car, the tracks, keeping it on the short tracks. Most of the guys already have a lot of the short tracks since they're racing in the late model league. So it was kind of just thrown up as a fun thing. And, consistently each week we've had anywhere between 16 and 20 drivers. So it really taken off. We moved it up to Tuesday nights and we knock them out in an hour. They're short races, short tracks, 50 laps usually. So it's going to be good. We're entering week 5 on the 21st there this Tuesday coming up. So it's looking to be pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly, I mean, unfortunately, I've been busy up in the booth with these, but I'll tell you, Andy Lambert, who's with us tonight, has raced every single one of these races. Can probably attest to just how much fun they are. They're a heck of a lot of fun to call. Andy, what's your impression as a driver as to where you think this series could go?
I think this series could grow really big. The late model division has that we created has brought in a lot of short track racers. Like you said, the quick 50 lap feature races are fantastic. The car's fantastic because it slides around. It's really racy. You can throw it in the corners and slide it around the corners. Um, it's just a perfect Saturday night type short track car with these short races. It's fun. It's exciting. You don't get bored with it, and it's in and out, and it's over with. So I think
perfect
it'll
Saturday
grow. I think
night
we'll
type
eventually,
short track car.
have to
with
cap
these
it
short
off at
races. It's fun.
a certain amount of cars, and you'll have to qualify your way in, just like the late models.
Yeah, I think it might actually get there. And one thing that I'm going to mention that this podcast is going to start becoming maybe not a weekly thing, but definitely it's going to be something that we're going to be doing once in a while. But getting back to the street stocks, it looks like the draw for the street stocks is quite large. It looks like a lot of interest is going into that car. They're fun cars, and I think a lot of it does stem back to the fact that it's 1 hour in and out, you're done. You don't have to worry about having that 2 hour block. You're in and out, like I said. And I got to give it up to Rick. He really thought this one out. He really decided, let's have some quick fun, and that's what you're getting on that particular series, the hashtag RecRick late model series. So Rick, as it is your series, I don't know if you have it up right now, but do you have last week's results?
Yeah, Chris Mefford ended up winning the race there. I don't actually have the results, but I can here for you.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it looks like Chris Mefford, our driver, led all 50 laps of the race. We were at Thompson Motor Speedway. Philip Martin came in second. Troy Radford came in third. Andrew Hill fourth. Chip came in fifth. Andreas Lambert, aka Andy, aka Adam, Wilbur, and Buford, came in sixth. Justin P came in seventh. Rowdy Johnson came in eighth. Craig Covington, one of our good friends over at Loose Lug Nuts Racing League, gracious with his presence. He came in ninth. Jason Garrett came in 10th. And actually, I think this was the first race, wasn't it? I don't even know what I'm doing.
Let's see. No, you're actually pulling.
No. Okay, we're right.
You're pulling the right track. It was Thompson Speedway. It was a 50 lapper, and you're absolutely right. Chris Mefford, Phil Martin, Troy Radford, Andrew Hill, and Chip Jisharoon were your top five. Andy, you ended up taking a sixth place finish out of that one. JP, Justin Purnell, Rowdy Johnson, Craig Covington, and Jason Garrett were your top 10. And of course, you had some other finishers in there. I'll throw out a hello to Travis Zudema, who I know races for Loose Lug Nuts. And Rick, you actually raced in that one too. You started 11th, looks like you finished 16th, so probably not the finish you were looking for there. But, again, it just watching the racing, it looks like you guys are having a great time on the tracks. Now, my question, I guess, for the drivers would be, how is the setup on the car? I know we run fixed setups here at Racing for a Cause, and we do that so that you don't have to spend 3 days trying to figure out a setup. But the stock iRacing setup seems to really fit these cars. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the setups are more friendlier with the street stock than they are the late model. Late model seems to push a lot if you tend to overdrive it, which a lot of newer drivers will do. The late model pushes and then will be loose off the corner. This car is kind of loose all the way around, but you can gather it up pretty quickly because the car's more user friendly, I guess you would say. So that's what makes it really fun, is you can just go out there and you can drive the wheels off the thing, and you can usually keep it underneath you, and you can even do some fender banging and keep it straight for the most part.
I mean, as of right now, we've had some pretty standard tracks that the street stocks would be at: Southern National, South Boston, Concord, Thompson. This week it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens, because we're going to the Phoenix 2008 track. And instead of 50 laps, it's going to be 40 laps, just because it is such a big track. We also threw in Rockingham for a 40 lapper. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes. But all in all, I mean, the stock base setup for these tracks with the street stocks, like Andy said, they're a little bit loose. Some guys might say they're a little tight. It all depends on driving, how you feel in the car. Myself personally, I like it a little bit loose. I wish it was a little looser than what it is, so you can really get it to slide around. But the car does good just with the stock setup. So I think it's a really good fit. Like you said, Chris, instead of spending 3, 4 nights trying to get a good setup, and not everybody's a setup god. So it's hard to do it that way. At least this way here, our drivers are all on an equal page, and there's no somebody who might have a little bit more time that has a setup, is not dominating the series. So it's been good. I mean, we only have so far in the 4 races that we've done, 1 repeat winner, which is Chris Medford in at Thompson last week and Southern National our first week. So it's been pretty good.
Well, that kind of brings us right into the next series. The next series, of course, being our strongest series, the Wednesday night late model series. 7 different races, 7 different winners. I don't think we could have asked for anything more when we came up with a rule package for this particular series at the beginning of the year. Myself personally, there's been some ups and downs. There's been some folks who maybe overdriving a little bit, but I think overall, I think that most people have responded very well to the late model series. Certainly, the last race at Iowa, I thought was one of the best races that this particular league and this series has been able to produce. Your thoughts on Iowa? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
Iowa was a tough track for me. I have a harder time with the bigger tracks for whatever reason. But the setup was good, and I just couldn't find the speed. But Iowa, you had plenty of room to race. I think I saw a lot of 3 and 4 wide, and it was a very clean race. So it led to some exciting side-by-side racing, and guys were overall very respectful. Car count was a little down for this race, but I think overall it was a well raced event.
Yeah, I mean Iowa. I mean, as you know, I for the Wednesday night league, I actually sit up in the booth with Rick Greenaway as race control admins, just trying to keep guys. But all in all, we didn't have to send anybody home last week. Iowa is one of those tracks that maybe not everybody owns. Once we get back, like this week, we're at Lanier, Langley. These guys, have all these tracks already. So I'm sure the car count's going to get up. And I thought it was a really good race last week, personally, myself.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the starting lineup. It looks like 19 cars started the race, which is what I would consider a full field, definitely. You had a fuel run ish. At the end of the race, it was all about fuel. Troy Radford, Scott Noslin, they both went for fuel. They did it right. Thomas Axum actually had been a lap down, got his lap back at the end. There's a lot of excitement there. Certainly, it was anybody's race. It was just a matter of stretching fuel. I didn't expect a fuel run in the late model series. We just simply haven't had a clean enough race to see that. So it was really awesome to see that. As a driver in that particular series, it was a lot of fun. I started 14th. I ended up 13th. So I picked up one position at the end of the day. I passed about 100 cars, I'm sure. But I think everybody came away from that track feeling pretty good about where the league and where this particular series is at this point. Any other further comments on the late models, guys?
Yeah, that's going to be one of the biggest storylines coming out of Iowa, is that it is our first ever fuel mileage race, and it was exciting. I think the viewers had a good time with it. If you look at the results, we had 6 liters for 6 lead changes, 6 liters, 4 cautions for 20 laps. That's got to be a season low or close to it. So Iowa was definitely one of our top races so far this season.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Iowa was a track that we were kind of worried about because it is a little bit. I mean, I know it's considered still kind of a short track, quote unquote, but it's really not. I mean, the big guys race here, and after all the little bit of dips and lows that we had this season so far, this is definitely, our best race of the season, and quite honestly, I think it was one of the best races that we've had in the 2 seasons of the late models. I mean, we just started this. We had our first season, which was 13 weeks, and we had a lot of good races that first season. Second season, we had a little bit of growing pains, I guess, if you want to call them. But a lot of the races were kind of rocky, caution filled. As we all know, cautions breed cautions. But the guys really put on a show with Iowa, and it was really refreshing to see. And like Andy said and Chris said, when it came down to that fuel mileage thing, I think that's a testament of what us admins did. We really thought about how we wanted to not just throw cars on a track and say, okay, you don't have to pit, you don't have to do, anything like that. So it was really cool to see how this race actually came down to that, because we thought, Thomas Axum, he led quite a few laps there. 47 out of all of them. He was the top lead lap, and it came down to that. He was praying for a caution. It didn't happen until after the fact, and he had to go down into the pits, and he ended up third, which is still great driving because, like Chris said, he came down from a lap down, worked his way back up. But Scott and Troy, they did what they had to do, and they took Troy took first and Scott took second, so that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and again, 100 laps, we were able to do that in about 53 minutes. You had 6 leaders, you had 6 different lead changes, only 4 cautions. I think the only race from season 1 that we can even try and compare that to as far as excitement would be our race at New Hampshire, where we did go caution free. But the thing that I'm looking at the most is the amount of incident points in that particular race here at Iowa last week was significantly down from the prior weeks this season. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, one, we only had the 19 cars, which is good. It's a full field. And two, I think guys are starting to finally get to the point where a little bit of give, a little bit of take, and sometimes that will lead you to finishing the race a little bit higher than if you don't. And that kind of brings us into our last series, and we will go over points, championships, races, and all that in a little bit here. But I want to get to our last series, which is the Circa Truck series that's being put on by Rick Greenaway. That particular series is starting to see a little bit of growth, and by that I mean this past week we had 12 drivers fielded for that race, and I want to say that they're a lot of fun to drive. Now next season they may not be around. We have talks, I guess, of going to a bigger track, but right now that is definitely one of the better series that we're putting on as far as point standings. Now, Rick, I know you've raced a couple. Andy, you've now raced a couple in them. I've raced all but one. And I got to tell you, it's great to start seeing some names that we haven't been seeing in the prior weeks. What do you guys think about that series?
I think it's a good series. It's growing. I definitely would. It's challenging because you got these big heavy trucks on these short tracks. The big steel-bodied NASCAR truck on a half mile is definitely a challenge. It's something different, which makes it interesting for the other. Sets it apart from the other series. It was good to see some other guys come out here at Bristol and support the series, and I think it'll grow as the season goes on. That being said, next week we're at Concord, so I don't expect a huge car count for Concord, but after that it should grow, and I'm hoping next year it will expand to some bigger tracks.
Yeah, and I just want to interrupt again. That this last week was at Bristol, which usually does bring out a few extra people, but even at Bristol, only 5 cautions for a very, very short track. You had 4 leaders, you had 5 different lead changes, so there was definitely a lot going on within that entire race. Rick, I know you were in there. What did you think?
Well, that race was the one that I was having a lot of wheel issues with. Got them tweaked out a little bit, so it wasn't my best race, but it's Greeny, which is who we call Rick Greenaway, since there's 2 Ricks in the league. But he's been putting a lot of work into this, and it is nice to see it grow a little bit. As Andy said, Concord, Not one of the best loved tracks out there, but moving on to week 6 and 7, we're hitting New Hampshire, Richmond. Then we're back to the short tracks over at Five Flags and New Samara. So, I hope that it continues to grow. Uh, Greeny has been putting a lot of work into this, which is very much appreciative. Unlike the other two series that we have, where we use just what iRacing gives us, Greeny has been actually making the uh, setups for these races. A lot of guys, they're a little tough to race because you're not used to it, and it's not something that you set up, and it's really set up more towards one person. But the series as a whole, each week it gets bigger. And as you said, and we'll talk about, I'm sure, maybe later, where Racing for a Cause is going. This might be the only season that we have of these trucks on the short tracks, but they've been a lot of fun to drive.
Yeah, they really have, and I'll tell you, because they are so heavy, because they're trucks, they've been a bit of a challenge. Um, but let's shift our attention back for just a moment. We're going to go back to the hashtag RecRick Street Stock Series. I want to go over current the season one point standings as of right now. So we're right now after week 4 of 13. We've got, looks like Troy Radford, Chris Mefford, and Andy Lambert are your top three, followed by Travis Zudema, Rhett Tucker, Justin Pinnell, Steve Mazzarelli, Rick Greenaway, Chip Dasharoon, and Dustin Covington. Those are your top 10 drivers out of that series. And it looks like over the last 4 weeks, we've had 31 different drivers driving in that series. That's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, like you said, people are really starting to gravitate towards it. I mean, you know, from position 1 to position 8, those guys have raced all 4 weeks, which again was Troy, Chris, Andy, Travis, Rhett Tucker, JP, Steve, and Greeny. So it's been really good, but it's amazing to see that we've had 31 different people in those, and the cars aren't for everybody. Um, there's a lot of guys that are in our league that came over for the late models that do run with other leagues. So, it's kind of it's still kind of nice to see though. The names, the guys are starting to come in. They're starting to race. I know a lot of them have been messaging me personally saying how fun the street stocks are, and they hope that gravitates to all the other series. And obviously, that's our hope too, because if we're not having fun, then we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. So it's been a really good season so far. I don't really know where people are going to end up. There's really, like I said, there's 8 drivers who so far made all the races, but there's up to 12 people that have only missed one race so far. Unfortunately, I missed 2 because of other issues going on, and also with my vacation. So I got a little bit of work to do, but I did move up 5 spots to 18th place, so I'm kind of happy about that.
Okay, and well, that brings us right back to the late models. Um, Current season standings there. You have Ryan Nolan in first place, Scott Naslin, Steve Baker. Steve Baker, who happens to be, and I want to make sure to mention this, Steve Baker was season one late model series champion. He's sitting in third place in the points. Andrew Hill, Philip Martin, Andy, you're sitting in sixth. I'm sitting in seventh. Greg Van Alst, eighth. Chris Mefford, ninth. And again, JP Justin Purnell rounds out your top 10. So he's doing both series. It seems like he's doing pretty well there. I'm going to go a couple of spots further because we do have some more regulars there. We have Rhett Tucker in 11th, Rowdy Johnson 12th, Troy Radford 13th. That's your top 13. And I'll tell you, all but one of those drivers has hit every single race so far this season, of which we've had 7 so far. It's getting down to brass tacks now. Scott Naslin looks like he's only 9 points behind Ryan Nolan, and I'll tell you, he's been one of the cleanest racers we've got so far out of that series this season. Um, So he's got a definite shot. Now it looks like Steve Baker is only 13 points behind the leader, so it's really, really tight up front. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think anybody in the top five, really has a realistic chance at the championship. And as far as Scott Naslund goes, yeah, racing around him, he is definitely clean. He's smooth, and I think he's gonna have something for Ryan Nolan here coming to the last 5 races of this thing.
Yeah, I have to agree there. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see as we get down. I mean, we're at our halfway point per se, where this is going to go. But I think I agree with Andy. Maybe even the top six or so. I mean, Andy, you're only 15 point or 43 points away. So, you give some clean racing and hopefully don't get bumped around too much and maybe get a little bit of bonus points. And I think you might have a shot too. I mean, same with Chris. You're not that far back, really. 52. There's definitely time to make up some of these. Maybe not enough, but I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it goes. Steve, like you said, is there. Scott's been doing really good. So, and Ryan's been fantastic in it. So we might have a new champion. Maybe Steve can pull it off though. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that brings us to the Thursday night trucks. Again, there's only been one driver in Philip Martin who's raced every single race. And so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. He is definitely leading the points, followed by myself. And then Andy, you're sitting there in third. Rick, you're sitting there in fourth. We have Jason Garrett rounding out the top five. Troy Radford, Chris Medford, Jimmy Crabtree, DJ Weltmeyer, Chase Sofford. That's your top 10. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you, that's a pretty strong top 10.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, these guys have been showing up, for a majority of the races. I mean, like you said, there's only been one guy so far who's made all of them. Chris, yourself, Andy, mine, we missed one race, but, it's going to be interesting to see.
And if you look at Philip Martin, he has, he started all 4 races, but he has, 4 top 5s in all those races too. So these trucks seem to be his wheelhouse for some reason. He gets these trucks a lot better or easier than the rest of us do. I noticed he runs a lot quicker than some of us do on this series. And I don't know, maybe it's just the setups suit him better. I don't know what it is exactly, but he seems to have taken to this series really well.
Well, Captain Consistency, I mean, let's face it, he's 25% for wins, he's 100% for top fives. That definitely leads you into a championship. Um, Now, as far as winners go, you've got Philip Martin, myself, you have Jason Garrett, who happened to win over at Bristol this past week, and Chip Disharone, who actually won last week or the previous week before Bristol. So you've got some people who may not race up front all the time in some of the other series, but seem to gravitate towards these trucks for whatever reason. And again, Andy hit it right on the head. These trucks do drive a little bit different than the cars. Perhaps maybe it's just that the setup happens to coincide with their driving a little bit better. It's funny. I don't feel as comfortable in the trucks, although I'm doing pretty well in the standings so far. But I don't feel as comfortable in the trucks as I do in a car. So it's kind of interesting to see that I'm sitting there in second place in the series standings. But that pretty much catches up everybody as far as where we are now. Now, where we are going into the future may change a little bit, and without putting out too much information right now, I already did say that trucks is probably one of those series that's going to change for next season, and that we're probably going to go to bigger tracks. And Rick, I know you probably know more about this, but it looks like it's going to go to bigger tracks and possibly the newer truck. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically what's going to happen, and I guess we can just start going into what you and I have talked about and some of the changes that are going to be happening. We might as well just put it out there, let guys know that we're not just sitting idly. So if it's okay with you, I'll continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So basically, after this season, um, as most of our drivers know and our members and most of our fans too, we've had a really rough start, Rocky. We grew considerably more than what Chris, Andy, and I have ever thought that Racing for a Cause would do. We kind of got away from the whole route that we kind of wanted to take it. So we're going to be doing some changes, and we've been doing a lot of talking. One of the main changes that's going to be happening is Chris and I are kind of quote unquote stepping away, but don't take that to heart because what's happening is Chris and I are now the sanctioning body. We're NASCAR of Racing for a Cause. So what we're going to do is we're going to be dealing with all the hard, tough work that nobody really wants to do.
And I just want to
Um,
interrupt for just 1 second. When you say
Yep.
now, you actually mean for season 3, not now.
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, for season 3, that's what we're going to be doing. What we're doing now is we're opening up to our members to become what Chris came up with as series directors. So what's going to be happening is we're looking at, and the days and nights of the week that we run are not set in stone yet. It's something that we have to work on. But uh, Andy Lambert and Patrick Smith are looking to start a K&N series, which is going to throw the K&N car onto NASCAR tracks. They've been talking about picking a schedule like 20 years ago of what NASCAR ran to run the series off of. We are going to be changing the points a little bit. We're going to be using the old NASCAR points. So instead of getting, 43 points for the winner, it's going to be like 184, I think it is, or something like that. That's something that we still have to work on. Uh, Late models aren't going anywhere. The series director for that has been picked already, and I don't know if we should put that out there yet, so we'll wait. Um, Greeny has talked about moving the trucks off from the short tracks, and the only reason why we're using the Circa 13 trucks on the short tracks is because this is a series that Rick Greenaway had actual real life experience in running the Northeast Super Trucks on the short track. So that's something that he kind of wanted to do. We found Greeny on another league page or league fan page, I guess you want to call it, on Facebook. We talked to him, and what he did is he came over and he decided that he wanted to run his league under the Racing for a Cause banner, which is something that we want to open up to everybody to have a chance for. And we can get into, maybe on another podcast on how all that works. But he has decided that he really wants to bring in the current trucks so that way guys can either pick the Chevy or the Toyota to drive, and it's going to be on the NASCAR cookie cutter tracks, as far as I know. That's not 100% set in stone, but that is the direction that he wants to go in. Late models are still going to be there, so I mean that's our starting point. We're definitely going to keep it. The Street Stock series, it really took off, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Probably going to stay. What I was thinking though is maybe cutting down the seasons down to like maybe a 10-week or a 10-week race season, and then take a week off or 2 weeks off, and then maybe bring in like one of the modifieds. I know a lot of guys showed a lot of interest way back when we decided to look at other series, and so what I might do is something where we do 10 weeks of the street stocks, then we do 10 weeks of the SK modified, and then we go back to the street stocks, back to the modifieds. See which one, gets more interest, and we're going to keep going. Another thing that we're also looking forward to coming up here in a few days, I think it's 10 days from now, Dirt's going to be dropping. That's something that Chris and I have talked. We definitely want to bring Dirt. We know that we need to bring Dirt into the league as soon as it drops, just because if we wait too long, drivers are going to go elsewhere. So we're definitely going to be starting a Dirt, and I know there's been talk floating around that Chris wants to start a road series. So that's something that we really got to figure out, see how many nights a week that we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff coming down the pipe. We're growing. What we need to start doing, and we're going to ask our members to, we need to start finding some drivers to fill out these other leagues. It's been great so far. The amount of time that drivers are using to fill the series that we have now is great, but we don't expect everybody to drive in every single race. There's no way you could do it. We all have lives outside of iRacing, and so that's what led Rick and I to let's get these other series owners, or whatever the term was that I came up with that Rick just said. Let's get these guys. It'll be their race. It'll be their night. Certainly they're going to have all of the support that we can give. If they need somebody up in the booth, maybe somebody can volunteer to do that. But um, it's all going to be under the Racing for a Cause banner, and that's what we're really looking forward to. And speaking about Racing for a Cause, the one thing that Rick and I had talked about, and we didn't talk about this before the podcast began, but the one thing that we had talked about in previous conversations is we are racing for a cause. And I know that some guys have their own paints that they love to run, but if there's any possible way, and it's not a requirement, it never has been, it never will be, but if there's any possible way that you have something that's near and dear to your heart, near and dear to something that has affected you, affected a family member, affected a friend, let's use this as a platform to get that particular cause out there. Put it on your paint. Make it something to race for. Make it fun. Make sure that everybody out there who happens to stumble upon one of our videos, one of our broadcasts, just make them think about it for a second. If they see, in my case, they see JDRF. Well, a lot of you guys may not know why I run JDRF. I run JDRF, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. I run that for my father, who's type 1 diabetic. I run it for my 10-year-old son, who was diagnosed at 4 years old with type 1 diabetes. So that is a very personal thing for me. That's why I run it. I know Rick has multiple sclerosis as one of his main sponsors. He runs that for, I believe it's an uncle. So it's a personal thing for us. And I really hate crashing because I don't want to screw up the paint job. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, the having a cause on the car, I think, sets us apart from other leagues. And even if it isn't something that personally affects you, I mean, it's all the better if it is something that's close to your heart. But even if it's not, something that you believe in. I think it was Patrick Smith who ran the Missouri Wildlife Foundation Conservation. Yep, he ran that, and that's something he cares about, and so he put that on his car, and that's what we should run. And that way it does separate us from all the other leagues out there. And I think more drivers that do it, the more it's going to set us apart, the more attention it's going to grab for our league. And I think that eventually it would be nice to see a full field of causes out there. I know there's a million of them out there, and we can all have one. Mine, Children's Miracle Network, fortunately, is not something that is close to my family, but it's definitely a good cause that I believe in to help sick children and to get them the best research possible to cure childhood illness. And so anything like that, I have lots of diseases in my family too. Rick runs the MS car, which affects my mother-in-law, and we have heart issues in our family. So, and somebody else was running that. So I picked the Children's Miracle Network because it's something I really truly believe in. And so if guys can take that and run with it, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, like Chris was saying, I run the MS society on my cars because of an uncle who was diagnosed with it and ended his military career after 30 some odd years. I also have somebody who I consider an aunt. She was one of my main babysitters when I was growing up as a child. So she became Aunt Cheryl. She has it. So it's something that's really near and dear to my heart. And that's how Racing for a Cause started. A lot of you guys might not know. But it started way back when Chris started iRacing. I mean, actually, I think it was like the first night we were talking about it as we are going around rookie Charlotte street stocks. And, we wanted something that set us apart from all the other leagues out there. Now, there is hundreds and hundreds of pages and leagues out there. And these guys that came over here, there's a lot of guys that just started running causes, and that's what we want to do. I mean, that's the whole basis for Racing for a Cause. We wanted to be different. We wanted to run for a purpose, not just to be a group of guys out there running with a crazy name. And a lot of guys have stepped up. I know JP, put on the Susan G. Coleman paint on his Dish Network car. Rowdy Johnson was another one who decided to have me do a paint for him for a local boy in his town that had a disease, and he ended up passing away. So it's really cool when these guys either come to me or Rick Greenaway is another guy who does some paints. He runs with the autism car because his son has autism, and that's really cool to see. Now, like Chris said, it's not mandatory, and it's kind of hard to make it mandatory. I know we have a lot of drivers out there that race real race cars. Greg Van Eltz, um, he wants to run what his sponsors are on his car. Jimmy Crabtree does the same thing. There's a couple of them out there that it's fine, but we would like to see a cause on the cars if at all possible. And like I said, there's a lot of painters out there that'll help you. You don't have to spend any money. I personally never charge for my paints. They're very basic. They're not great or perfect, but I don't mind taking the time to do it for somebody who's going to run with a cause, because that's what we're all about. And that's the community that Chris and I, and then we brought Andy in when he started iRacing. It's what we want to do. And I always think it's a good thing, and it really does set us apart. There's leagues out there that do, they might do qualifying different. They might do heat races. They might just say, screw the points. We're not doing points. We're just doing a bunch of fun races, and that's all good and said. That's what they want to do. But our main focus here was racing for a cause, and that's why we are racing for a cause, and it's been good. There's a lot of guys that have stepped up, and that's really nice to see.
Absolutely. And you know what? With that, this went a little bit longer than I was thinking it would tonight. Guys, we're going to be doing this more often. If it's something that another admin wants to join in, obviously feel free. Let us know. If you're a driver and you want to join in, feel free. Let us know. Basically, at the end of the day, we've said it before. We've said it a thousand times. This is the Drivers League. We're here to do what we think is best for the driver. We want drivers' inputs. Doesn't mean that we're going to change everything on the whim of a driver, but we'll definitely listen. At the end of the day, we just want to have a great experience for everybody who drives for us and with us, and that's what it's all about, racing for a cause. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights right now, hoping to expand it out a little bit more. Dirt's coming March 29th. Can't wait for that. I've been watching a lot of dirt racing, trying to figure out exactly how these guys go around corners. Turning right to go left still doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's how they do it. So with that, I guess I'll just ask any final thoughts at all, Andy?
We got two bull rings coming up for the late models, our flagship series. We got Lanier this week, the FMTV 2150 presented by FusionMotorsportsTV.com at Lanier, and then next week the St. Jude 150 at Langley. These are two small little short tracks that are going to require a lot of patience. So if you're just a viewer out there, expect some action, and it's going to be riveting for sure. If you're a driver, be patient and take it easy these next two races, because they are going to be challenging on these little bull rings.
Yeah, and any final thoughts from you, Rick?
Yeah, just real quick. It's not going to be the Fusion Motorsports 150. It's actually going to be the OSR Online Sim Racing Network. Joe has changed where he is doing his broadcast, so I'm going to change that for him. As Andy said, patience, give room, a little bit of give and take, have fun. And as Chris said, this might not be an every week thing, but Chris and I talked and we figured that this is going to be the best way that our members can actually hear from what we are doing as a league, instead of trying to get everybody packed into TeamSpeak on one certain night, before a race or after a race. So that's really about it. Just go out there, have fun, guys, and keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and a final thought from me. We're going to make sure to post a link to all of the podcasts on our our website at www.racing4acause.com. We're also going to post the podcast link on our Facebook page. It's a good idea to listen to them. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But there's probably going to be at some point some information that you're not going to want to miss on this podcast. Try and keep it as light as we can. Try and keep it as short as we can. Again, we went, we're at 45 minutes right now. We're going to try and keep it to about a half an hour. Hopefully, going forward, we won't have to catch up on so much. We can just kind of keep going. It should be quick and to the point. If you want to join us on the podcast, please just send us a message. We'll send, from here on out, we will have a date and time that we plan on doing these podcasts in the future. Again, I don't believe it's going to go to an every week thing, at least not yet. But if it does, it does. It'll be based on input from our drivers and from anybody in the community. So just want to thank you guys again. Rick and Andy, thank you very much for coming out and talking with us tonight. And we'll catch you on next time.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And just really quick, I just want to thank all the drivers that have made Racing for a Cause what it is today. Because without you, we wouldn't be nothing but three guys running around a track by ourselves, and I would always be third, which would be last. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely. These guys, it's a great group of guys we have. Everybody is at a different level. And we have some really fast guys at the top. We got some, average middle level guys, and we got some guys that are still learning and coming up. But overall, we have a great group of guys week in and week out in this series. And I could have never imagined such a better group of people to work with and race with. It's a ton of fun. So yes, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. And with that, this is Chris signing off for Andy and Rick. Have a great night. One step from lashing out at you. You want to get under my skin and call yourself a friend. I've got more friends like you. What do I do? Is there no standard anymore? What it takes, who I am, where I've been, belong. You can't be something you're not. Be yourself, by yourself, stay away from me. A lesson learned in life, known from the dawn of time. Respect, walk. What did you say? Respect, walk. Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me? Run your mouth when I'm not around. It's easy to achieve. You cry to weak friends that sympathize. Can you hear the violins playing your song? Those same friends tell me you're every word. Is there no standard anymore? What it takes, who I am, where I've been, belong. You can't be something you're not. Be yourself, by yourself, stay away from me. A lesson learned in life, known from the dawn of time. Respect, walk. What do you say?